ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that Sasha's return could not come at a more volatile moment, and that is exactly why her presence in Port Charles feels less like a reunion and more like the start of a storm. The timing alone changes everything. Just as Jacinda has confirmed her pregnancy, Michael's future is thrown into a new and deeply complicated light. What might once have been a fragile path toward emotional clarity is now tangled in obligation, uncertainty, and the kind of pressure that General Hospital stories thrive on. Sasha does not come back to a clean slate. She comes back to a life that has already shifted beneath Michael's feet, and the pain of that timing gives the entire situation a sharper emotional edge. For Michael, Jacinda's pregnancy is not simply another development in his romantic life. It is a turning point that forces him to confront what kind of man, father, and partner he is capable of being when the people around him are all pulling him in different directions. His future no longer belongs entirely to him. Every decision now carries consequences that reach beyond his own heart. Sasha's return reopens a chapter he never truly finished, especially when so much was left unresolved between them, and especially when their daughter remains a living reminder of what they once had and what they lost. Yet Jacinda's pregnancy creates a new reality that Michael cannot ignore, and that reality makes every emotional instinct feel like a potential betrayal of someone. At the same time, Michael is not only being cornered by matters of love and family, he is also being drawn into dangerous calculations connected to Willow and the shadow of her crimes. That is what makes this storyline so powerful. Michael is no longer standing between two women in a simple emotional dilemma. He is being forced into a much darker network of choices, where personal loyalty, moral truth, and survival begin to blur together. Willow's crimes are not fading into the background. They continue to shape the atmosphere around everyone connected to her, and Michael is now trapped in the fallout. Whether he wants it or not, his future is being measured against what Willow has done, what she may do next, and how much damage remains hidden beneath the surface. This is where Sasha's return becomes far more important than a romantic twist. She does not just re-enter Michael's life as a former love. She returns at the exact moment when the emotional center of Port Charles is becoming unstable. Her presence forces Michael to look at himself more honestly, but it also threatens Willow in a way that is both personal and strategic. Sasha represents memory, truth, and a version of Michael's life that was never fully buried. For Willow, that is a problem. The more Sasha returns to the picture, the harder it becomes for Willow to keep control over the narrative surrounding Michael, the children, and the fragile balance she has tried to protect. Sasha's return therefore changes the nature of the conflict. What may have once been quiet resentment now has the potential to become open war. Willow's next move matters because everything about her behavior suggests that she is still trying to adjust, recalculate, and protect herself from the consequences closing in around her. Her actions no longer feel reactive alone, they feel strategic. That is why the tension between Sasha and Willow begins to deepen in such a meaningful way. This is not just about jealousy, insecurity, or unresolved emotional wounds. It is about territory, influence, and the fear of losing control over Michael's future. Sasha may not return with a plan to fight, but her very existence in Michael's life becomes a threat to whatever fragile power Willow still believes she holds. And once Willow starts making new calculations, the danger grows. The shock becomes even more intense with the possibility of Willow returning with baby Daisy. That development would not simply add another emotional complication. It would completely alter the balance of power between the women, between Michael and Willow, and within the broader structure of the story itself. Daisy is not just a child in this conflict. She becomes a symbol of leverage, vulnerability, and emotional truth. If Willow returns with Daisy, then every prior calculation has to be revised. Michael's responsibilities become heavier, Sasha's emotional position becomes more precarious, and Willow's motives become even harder to separate from her fear. In soap storytelling, a child often changes the emotional stakes of every room, and Daisy's presence here would do exactly that. What makes this especially compelling is the sense that nobody in this story is moving from a place of peace. Michael is pulled apart by competing responsibilities. Sasha is returning to a life that may no longer have a place ready for her, yet still carries emotional ties she cannot simply erase. Willow is clearly still operating from a place of instability, guilt, and desperation, and that often makes a character more dangerous, not less. Jacinda's pregnancy adds another layer of urgency, making the future feel crowded before anyone has had time to heal from the past. This is why the storyline feels like it is expanding beyond a typical family conflict. The emotional mess is becoming structural. It is starting to reshape the direction of General Hospital itself. The trouble grows because each new development pushes the others further out of balance. Jacinda's pregnancy forces Michael to think ahead. Sasha's return forces him to look back. Willow's crimes force him to reckon with the present in all its ugliness. And the possibility of Willow appearing again with Daisy means the emotional battlefield is about to widen even more. No one gets to stand still. No one gets to remain innocent. Every choice now feels like it will cost someone their hope, their place, or their future. That is exactly the kind of narrative pressure that can transform an ordinary triangle into something much more painful and unforgettable. Sasha and Willow's conflict is especially fascinating because it feels like more than a rivalry over Michael. It feels like a clash between two different versions of what his future could become. Sasha carries history, tenderness, and unfinished love, but also the ache of absence and lost time. Willow carries damage, secrecy, and a desperate need to preserve what remains of her world, even if that means making choices that push everyone else closer to the edge. Their battle, therefore, does not only threaten Michael's emotional stability, it threatens to redraw the moral map of the story. Whoever gains ground in this conflict may not simply win his heart, she may influence what kind of man Michael becomes after all of this. That is why this new wave of trouble feels so significant. It is not just another dramatic disruption. It has the potential to push GH into a different emotional era, one shaped by secrets coming due, children caught in the middle, and old love resurfacing at the worst possible moment. Sasha's return, Jacinda's pregnancy, Willow's crimes, and Daisy's role in the story all combine into something larger than any single twist. Together, they create a chain reaction that could send every relationship involved into deeper chaos. Personally, this is the kind of storyline that lingers because it is built on emotional timing as much as plot. Sasha coming back just when Michael's future becomes more complicated feels cruel in the most effective soap opera way. It hurts because it feels almost right, almost possible, and painfully late. And when a story reaches that point, when every return feels like both a hope and a threat, that is usually when General Hospital becomes the most compelling. Robert's memorial episode is approaching, and Sasha's return feels not only inevitable, but emotionally necessary. As Robert's daughter, her presence at such a pivotal moment would carry enormous weight. But this is what makes the story far more powerful than a simple return for remembrance. Sasha would not be coming back merely to mourn. She would be stepping back into Port Charles at a time when Robert's legacy, the truth surrounding his death, and her own place within that legacy are all beginning to collide. The grief of losing her father would not remain private for long. It would quickly become entangled with questions of inheritance, truth, and justice, turning Sasha's homecoming into something much more charged and dangerous than anyone may expect. What makes this story so compelling is that grief alone is never enough in Port Charles. A memorial may begin as a tribute, but it often becomes the space where old wounds reopen and hidden truths push their way to the surface. For Sasha, Robert's death is not only a devastating personal loss, it is also the event that forces her to confront everything that may have been left unresolved around him. The more she steps into the shadow of his legacy, the more she may begin to realize that his death is not something she can accept at face value. That suspicion changes her emotional direction completely. Instead of returning only as a daughter in mourning, Sasha becomes a woman driven by pain, instinct, and the growing need to understand whether the story she has been given is truly the whole truth. That shift is where the emotional force of this plot begins to rise. Sasha's sorrow would naturally make her vulnerable, but vulnerability does not make her weak. If anything, it sharpens her need to protect what still belongs to her. Robert's legacy is not only about memory or bloodline. It is about what he leaves behind, what he stood for, and what Sasha now feels compelled to defend before other people distort, bury, or exploit it. That is why her return carries such significance. She is not simply reclaiming a place in her father's life after his death. She is fighting for the right to stand as his daughter in every meaningful sense, especially if there are forces around her trying to reduce her role, sideline her grief, or keep her away from the truth. As Sasha becomes more deeply tied to the aftermath of Robert's death, the story naturally intensifies. The truth behind that death begins to matter not just emotionally, but structurally. It starts affecting how Sasha sees the people around her, how she interprets silence, and how she measures the intentions of those who may claim to care while withholding crucial facts. In a story like this, every unanswered question becomes a source of tension. Every delay feels suspicious. Every official explanation sounds thinner the longer grief settles in. Sasha's need for answers therefore grows stronger with each step, and that search gives her story a different kind of urgency. She is no longer returning just to cry, remember, and disappear again. She is returning to face a truth that may alter everything she thought she understood about her father's final chapter. At the same time, Sasha's emotional battle is also becoming a legal and personal one. The issue of her rights begins to take on new importance because legacy in Port Charles is never only sentimental. It is also tied to recognition, position, and what a person is allowed to claim after loss has torn through their life. Sasha may begin to realize that protecting Robert's legacy also means protecting her own rightful place within it. That struggle could become one of the most defining parts of her return. She would not only be mourning a father, she would be demanding that no one erase her standing, diminish her connection, or make decisions about Robert's legacy without acknowledging what belongs to her. This is where the storyline starts to take on a stronger and more transformative shape for General Hospital. Sasha's return would no longer function as a temporary emotional beat attached to a memorial episode. It would become the beginning of a much larger arc centered on grief, truth, and reclamation. The tension rises because Sasha is no longer passive in the face of loss. She is adjusting, recalculating, and pushing back. She understands that once people sense uncertainty around a death or a legacy, they begin moving pieces behind the scenes. Some want closure, some want control, some want silence. Sasha's instinct, however, would be to resist all of that. She would hold on tightly not only to Robert's memory, but to the belief that his death should not become another event that is quickly folded away before the truth is fully seen. That determination gives Sasha a sharper edge than many may expect. Her pain becomes motivation, her grief becomes discipline. The emotional heartbreak of losing Robert does not destroy her sense of self. Instead, it may awaken something more focused, more resilient, and more fearless. This is exactly why her story has the potential to reshape the current GH narrative. Sasha is no longer just a figure returning from the margins. She becomes central again, because the questions surrounding Robert's death and the fight over what she is owed give her a purpose that is both deeply personal and dramatically explosive. The audience would not simply be watching her mourn, they would be watching her reclaim power at the very moment life has tried to strip it away. And that is what gives the story its real emotional weight. Sasha's battle would not only be about rights in a legal or symbolic sense, it would also be about emotional ownership. She would be fighting for the right to grieve, honestly, to ask dangerous questions, and to refuse easy answers when those answers feel designed to keep her quiet. In that sense, protecting Robert's legacy and protecting herself become the same fight. If she loses one, she risks losing the other. That makes every step forward feel heavier, because Sasha is no longer chasing peace. She is chasing clarity, dignity, and the right to stand in the truth, even if that truth causes new shockwaves across Port Charles. The most powerful part of this kind of storyline is that it allows Sasha to evolve in a way that feels earned. Returning for Robert's memorial would be emotional on its own, but returning to confront the truth behind his death and to reclaim what is rightfully hers gives the character a much stronger dramatic path. It raises the stakes of every scene and makes her presence matter beyond nostalgia. Her grief, her need for justice, and her determination to protect her place in Robert's legacy all work together to push her story into deeper territory. That is the kind of arc that can truly change the direction of GH, because it connects personal sorrow with a wider fight for truth and recognition. Personally, this is the version of Sasha's return that feels the most meaningful. A memorial episode can be beautiful, but it becomes unforgettable when it also opens the door to something rawer and more lasting. Watching Sasha come back not just to cry for Robert, but to defend his legacy and her own place in it would give the story a quiet strength that feels both heartbreaking and powerful. There is something deeply moving about a character refusing to let grief make her small, and if GH takes Sasha in that direction, her return could become one of the most emotionally resonant turns the show has had in a long time.